one more. There we go. Now everybody knows, recording in progress. Welcome and thank you for being here. My name is Davey Gerhard and I am the Director of Development for the Diocese. I spend my time on Bishop Mark's staff helping our congregations to raise money through their stewardship, capital campaigns, and legacy or planned giving. I also work with our institutions on that, and it's a great joy to me. I also help the diocese raise its operating support through grants and major donor efforts and things like that. So it's a fun job. You never know what you're going to get. But the greatest joy is talking to you and congregations about stewardship and about raising money, because it's all about mission. Tonight, we're going to talk about this topic called a mid-year stewardship review of budget and mission. And in saying that, I want to acknowledge that you may see this as an event, and certainly that's how I describe it, sort of a single time to bring people together to talk about this. But everything that we're talking about this evening in terms of review of our mission and budget could also be things that you might put in your social media, things that you put in your newsletter, things that you put on your website. So if it's not an event like your annual meeting where you bring everyone together and discuss things, it can be parceled out in little ways throughout the year. The important thing is that we learn together how to report on our budget goals and our actuals, and how we talk about how that impacts our mission. I just want to say that as a disclaimer up front. I'm going to keep talking about this thing called a mid-year stewardship review, but what I mean is how we report on our budget and mission throughout the year. That said, I'm going to start our slide presentation. Tonight's learning objectives. We're going to learn why we need to do this work, why we need to review our mission and our budget and remind our members of what's going on. We're going to talk about how we report on money, mission, and membership, and why those three are distinct and why they're important, and how some best practices on how and why we can do that. Stewardship and the heart of stewardship begins with gratitude. Gratitude for what we have received, gratitude for what we're able to share, gratitude for the love and the life that we share with each other in our congregations and in our ministries. All of our stewardship is about gratitude. It's our giving. It's the money that the time, talent, and treasure that we have to share with our congregation. It's our volunteering. It's the hours that we spend and commit to our congregations. Our congregations wouldn't exist without amazing volunteers to participate in them. Yes, our paid staff is also crucial to the functioning of our congregations, but we need the vital ideas and energy of our volunteers. So that also is a part of our stewardship. It's also about our risk-taking. And what do I mean by that? Our communities need our best ideas, and they need them in moments of crisis and in moments of confidence. And when we can bring together, sort of without shame, without judgment, our best ideas, our creativity, we bring all of that to help our congregations improve, to become better, to become stronger. And so some of those things are taking risks. Maybe it's our own vulnerability. Maybe it's in throwing out a really great idea or a really new idea that could be scary. And we take some risks when we share our ideas or when we start to explore them as a community. Change has implications. And so sometimes when we propose new ideas, they are risky. So that's why I put risk-taking as a part of our stewardship. It's part of the work we do together. It's about our leadership, our clergy and our elected leadership, our vestry or bishops committee, but it's also about the ways each of us picks up the work and leads when we need to. A community is as strong as its members, and we can't always be all strong all the time, right? So we need to pick up for each other when things are hard or crazy or busy in our lives. So leadership is fluid. It flows back and forth between all of us who share this work of ministry together. That's a really beautiful thing. It's one of the gifts that we can give. It's also about our calmness. When we can be calm and appreciative and give that energy into a moment of heated debate or crisis or conversation, that's one of the best gifts that we can give in our stewardship. Maybe that Christian hope, that assurance that all will be well. This is a part of what we do together. Finally, we need to accept the gifts that others give us, the time, talent, and treasure that other people give so that we can have safety or a place that's here for us or a ministry that we need. Everything that we do in church serves both the internal, the members, and the external, our community. And so we need to be able to, gratitude is about accepting what we've received as well. And that keeps that gratitude going. Start or do your work of reporting and review always with a practice of gratitude. It's also important to do this work not only so that we get our numbers and our metrics out there, but so that we can form our congregation in good stewardship practices. Stewardship formation comes in a lot of different ways. It comes through preaching and teaching and book reading, through the transparent and accountable leadership of our vestry and our treasurer and our budget process. But also it's about the way we talk about money and faith through the year together. And the ministry review is one of the tools that we can use to bring everyone on the same page about where we're at with our budget, where we're at with our goals, and how we are impacting the community. It also, this review also gives us a chance to update and engage our ministry priorities or call for volunteers or help on things that are sliding off scale. So when we review our work throughout the year, those goals that we set at our annual meeting or at the vestry retreat, things that we said we wanted to accomplish, if we give ourselves a chance to review them throughout the year, before the end of the year, then we have a chance to correct, then we have a chance to move together forward. And this is really important for us. Again, it's about transparency and accountability. When we can all see where our money is going and how it comes in and how it's accounted for, and we trust that process, it helps us feel safe about giving our gifts, sharing our ideas, and leading others to do that work. It's a temperature check on how connected our members are to the mission. If we notice halfway through the year that our income, our pledges are dropping off, people aren't giving their money, and they are not on vacation or somehow otherwise have an explained reason why they might not be able to make their gift, it's a good check to see how people are feeling about the goals we achieved or the goals we presented and where we're at with them. Episcopalians are not alone in the fact that they vote with their dollars and they vote with their pledges. This is one of the ways, passive aggressive though it might be, that we communicate our pleasure or displeasure with what's going on in church. So if we notice a trend, if we notice a slump, it's a chance for us to say what's going on here and do something corrective before the year goes away and we lose an opportunity to end the year well. We report on the money. That's one of the three areas that we talk about when we do a mid-year review. And numbers are important, but they don't tell the whole story. Numbers only do half of the work. We will talk about, and I encourage you to talk about your pledge year to date and your expenses year to date, how things are coming in and going out. Also about your other numbers, your metrics. But those numbers will need some analysis and need some conversation. They're a practical measure of our expected revenue. So when we put our expenses and our revenue and match them up with our projections, we can see where we'd hope to be and where we need to get to. That can help people be more generous. It can inspire people to think more creatively or change direction if they need to. Numbers are a small window into the capacity and generosity of our members. And I say a small window because, again, they don't tell the whole story. We did a capital campaign here in the diocese, and one of our congregations participated with us collaboratively. Actually, several did, but the one I'm thinking of managed to raise 477% of their pledge and plate in their capital campaign. They asked people to make gifts paid off over 5 years, and people gave 5 times what they do in their pledge and plate. That's an amazing amount of money. And what it says is that perhaps their members aren't making their best stewardship gift year after year because they had a lot to give in their capital campaign. Now, it's an extraordinary example, right? Because a capital campaign is a one-time appeal and it's time limited. But what it tells us about that congregation and perhaps about others is that there's a lot more money than comes in our pledge process if we ask for it. If we don't ask for it, we certainly won't get it. Finally, when we report on the money, it's a measure, it's a part of the measure into the impact or the adoption of our mission. This is akin to that conversation about having a temperature check on how our members feel about how things are going. But it's also about a review of our ministry. What did we say we wanted to do at our annual meeting, or what are the goals that we set about? And do they still match what people want? Often we put things up in a strategic planning process that sound good, that maybe even we intend to do. But when practicality comes, when the rubber meets the road, as it were, it's more difficult to implement, or perhaps it doesn't hold the same excitement as it did when we proposed it. This is a chance to really check in on how people are adapting and adopting to the mission. A few more thoughts about numbers. It's not just enough to report them, but to analyze them. We should be looking at trends. I always like to look at trends at least 3 years in a row. And that's not just final stewardship numbers each year, but look at cash flow throughout the year. You can get a real good projection of how households are going to make their gift by looking at trends. This might seem obvious, but it's work that we don't always think about doing in church. And so if your church isn't looking at a spread of data over a couple of years, you might want to start doing that, because you can start to notice patterns. Oh, this family always lowers their giving in the summer because they're doing other things and they're traveling, but they catch up at the end of the year. Some people do all of their giving at the end of the year, or at the beginning of the year, or at tax time. It all depends on how people arrange their personal finances, and being able to know that and then project it helps us with our cash flow, also helps us wonder when somebody isn't paying off their pledge, not to panic, because we know that they're going to catch up, because historically they have in the past. We should look at gifts over time. Are people making the same gift year after year? Are they filling out the pledge paperwork, and they're not really thinking about it, or maybe they're not making a change? Do we have a reason to think they could make a change? Like, we know that they are in their career and making more money perhaps this year than they did last year, but their giving is staying the same. It's a time to start asking some questions. That's not to say that we're going to pry into people's personal finances. The way they make and spend and give their money is between them and God. But we do have some questions that we might want to ask, or at least an obligation to educate folks about the various ways that they can get involved in our mission and our ministry, so that they can take advantage of what we're doing, so that we can make sure that they're making their best gift to the church, because those are important to us as well. We should look at unexplained events. So if somebody suddenly decreases or increases, what's going on? And it might be worth reaching out to have a pastoral conversation when you notice something. I always remind people, when we're talking about money and gifts in the context of church, that money is a pastoral conversation. It's not a financial one. This is because we put a lot of stuff on our money. We put our hopes and our fears and our future plans. We define our successes and failures by money. It keeps us up at night, or it makes us feel secure and safe. We use money either metaphorically or practically to explain or to justify a lot of our behaviors. And so when we notice something in a member's giving, it might be time to reach out and have a pastoral conversation about what's going on. Whenever we talk about money, we're going to get some deep stuff, because money unlocks deep, sometimes secrets, or sometimes joys, sometimes hopes. Whatever we'll have, that conversation will be rich and deep and wonderful and pastoral. When we report on the budget, we need to make it interesting. That's not to say be creative with your budget and untrue, but we should talk about impact. It's more pertinent than line items. What do I mean by that? Of course, we need to know where we are at any moment with the various pieces and parts of our budget. That's for the treasurer and the finance committee and your vestry or bishops committee to worry about. But our members, they might need to know more than the line item budget. How is our impact? What are we doing with this money? What's going on with it? We're going to talk in a little bit about impact and mission as a way to explain our work, but I think that it starts with the budget. One of the tools that we have at our disposal is a narrative budget. I know many of you have experienced narrative budgets before, and in fact, for several years now, the diocese has been producing its annual budget in a narrative format and giving it to churches in big posters to put up in your parish hall. The work of a narrative budget is really an important thing, because it takes our costs and it defines them by our ministries or our priority areas. And so it helps us give a real snapshot at any one time about how our ministries are funded, what it really takes to run them. A narrative budget takes our fixed costs, like salaries and benefits, like building and maintenance, like utilities and insurance and assessment even, and it spreads it out over our program areas in a percentage. And so when we do that, we can look at our clergy time, for example. How much time does your clergy devote to your liturgy, to your community, to your civic outreach, to your pastoral needs, to your programs, whatever those are, to your children and family program, perhaps. And when we take that metric and percentage, and we look at other things like building use, how much of your building is used for your liturgy versus groups that use it throughout the week to do their work. So a community outreach, or maybe you run a program out of it, like a food program or an after school program or something like that. We start to look at our building in terms of our mission or priority areas, and then we can drill down into each of those. What it does is it takes from your line item Excel spreadsheet, which your treasurer loves, or your balance sheet, which your finance committee loves, and it turns it into a statement that talks about impact and mission. This is really important in a way that we think about reporting on our budget. TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, is an organization that works with all Episcopal dioceses in the United States and in the Anglican Church of Canada. And TENS has created a tool. The Diocese of California is a member of TENS, and so y'all can access it. We can access it. It is a tool on narrative budgets that is a how-to. It's a document and an infographic and a step-by-step process on how to turn your line item budget into a narrative budget and help people explain what it is that you do and how you do it for your church and what your programs really cost. When we're reporting on our budget, it's really important to remark on notable changes in practice or expectation. What I mean by this is that if something is really different this year from last year, and it's a big risk that we took on, let's report on it right away. If we said we wanted to hire a new staff position and we want to report on that, how is it going? This was a new mission or priority area for us. Spend a little bit of extra time talking about that new priority because people were engaged enough to want it to happen. We devoted resources, time, talent, and treasure to making it happen. So remark on some notable changes in our budget. At the same time, we should be really open and honest and immediate when there's a problem in a ministry or a program or larger in the context of the church. We should be quick about naming it, reporting on it, and starting to solve it. This is because I think we're afraid sometimes of seeing perhaps a ministry that isn't going the way we'd planned. Maybe we wanted to serve 100 kids a year in a after school program, and it's midway through the year and we're only looking at 20 or 25 kids. So we're not going to meet that goal. Well, let's start talking about that up front before it's the end of the year, before we have to analyze the whole program. Are there things we could be doing now to impact or correct or change the course of action? This is about staffing changes as well. So if you have to lay off staff throughout the year, or if you're taking on new staff and it wasn't a part of the budget, take the time to explain that to folks and let people know what's going on so it doesn't come as a surprise to them. I know this is really common sense kind of information, but sometimes in the day-to-day operation of church and when we're moving at a fast pace, we forget to do these things. And then it comes back later and people say, well, why didn't you tell me about that? Or it affects our transparency and accountability. It also, if there are areas or committees or guilds that are understaffed as the year progresses and you want to do a volunteer push for them, a chance to review our numbers throughout the year is a real good way to say, this program, it's good, but it needs more energy. We need more people to volunteer for it. How many more people need to come? What do they need to do? How are you going to train them? How are you going to prepare them for this work? So all of these give us a chance in the middle of the year or throughout the year to do this work before it gets too late. Also, as we report on money throughout the year, it can help us with the cash flow. Many of our congregations operate on a very lean cash in, cash out basis, and this is really important to be thinking about cash flow. During the summer, a lot of congregations, even in the pandemic, have experienced, a fall off of pledges because people are traveling or people aren't in church or they're not thinking about church. They'll come back in the fall, but that has a real impact on the summer slump, as we call it, in our cash flow in churches. So you probably know who these donors are. You know who has a vacation home, who's going to be out of pocket during the summer, who's not going to be answering emails or phone. If you know that, ask them up ahead. Maybe they can prepay their summertime pledge, or maybe they can do an automatic bill pay from their bank so that the money keeps coming in. If they can afford it, ask them to do it. Advocate for online giving. If you don't have some online giving tools in your congregation, a way for people to easily make and change a gift that they make online, you're missing some opportunity for people to help you keep your cash flow current. So make sure that you offer online giving. It can be done from anywhere. The power of recurring giving in online giving is really important. It's a little switch that almost every online giving platform allows people to switch on, and it says, repeat this gift monthly or quarterly or semi-annually on whatever frequency you want. And then it's set. That money will come out for whatever period of time you want it to. This is really helpful for our congregations, and it's a really powerful tool. After a while, people don't even notice it going out of their account anymore. It just makes sense. I do this kind of giving with my own church. It comes out of the same day I get my paycheck, a little gift goes off to my church. It's timed that way. And so I don't even think about it anymore. It just happens. And that's really great because it allows me to keep current. Whereas before, when I was writing checks, I would get behind. I would miss a Sunday or I'd miss a few Sundays and I'd get behind. And then all of a sudden I had to recover from that. No one wants to do that. Advocate for other kinds of automation, electronic funds transfer or ACH payments, bill pay, other options that keep cash flow steady. Your bank probably has a whole lot of tools. Let's talk a little bit about reporting on the mission. Program is the heart of church. It's why we do what we do. It's the impact that we have in the community. Throughout the year, in your website or your bulletin or an announcement from the chancel steps or your newsletter, report on the ministries or programs that your church does. Maybe rotate through the different programs and ministries that your church does. Offer a report every few months on where things are at. Let people know what's going on. Bring in testimonials. There are times, if it's appropriate, and you have clients that use your service, like a food bank or something like that, or a clothing swap, something. If the members are comfortable and it's appropriate to invite them in to give a video testimonial about what your church's ministry means to them. Members love to hear that, right? Because it helps them connect their giving with the impact that it's having on the community. So some testimonials, some videos, some witness statements, minutes for mission, we like to call them. Your members want to hear stories and hear them directly. They can hear them from the participants, either the staff who run them, or the members or the people who benefit from them, all the better. It really helps us understand the reality and the realization of our gifts. When we give our time, talent, and treasure, we sometimes lose track of the impact that it's having. This is a way to bring that impact right back into your congregation and into people's awareness. Impact is more important than budget. Okay, that might be a controversial statement, but what I'm trying to say there is that our budgets are important to keep us accountable, to talk about how the money comes in and how it goes out. But it's the impact, the work that we do in our community, outside and inside, that is really important. And it's what our budgets enable us to do. A budget just enables the operations of the church. And the operations of the church and the ministry of the church are to feed and shelter and clothe and love and serve. And when we're doing those things internally and externally, that's the work. Our budget is our budget. It just describes how we're going to get there. But it's the impact that motivates people to make gifts and to support the ministry. So tell the story of your ministry. It's not just enough to say that we have a food program or a backpack drive or we collect toys at the holidays. How many of those things do you do? How many toys did you collect? How many kids or families benefit from it? How often do you do cleanup projects in your local park or in an environmental area? What are the metrics? Talk about them. Give the numbers, give them impact, give the community impact. This is really important to help our members connect their gift to the mission of the church. How much use is your building getting? This is an important question to ask because our buildings, in COVID, of course, the doors have been shut to a lot of our space rental or other community organizations. But in times when we don't have to practice social distancing, our churches are open all the time for people coming and going and running programs. A few years ago, a nonprofit consulting group that works with churches on capital campaigns called Partners for Sacred Spaces conducted a study across the United States. And what they learned is that on average, in every church, mosque, temple, or synagogue, so all houses of worship, they contributed an average of $1.1 million worth of service annually to their community. So that takes into account mega churches with massive programs and tiny churches with InReach as their main program. But on average, just by being where you're at, by having doors that open and lights that are on and people coming and going, you contribute an average of $1.1 million worth of service to your community, probably more because you do more, because our diacal congregations are active in their communities. That's an average number, right? And that shows us that our churches are really important to our communities. They're worthy of being supported. When a church closes or when it diminishes, that value to the whole community, whether they're members or not, is missing. And that's a big deal. That's big and important in our congregations and in our communities. We need to be there for our communities and serve them. It's also about community response. So I like to say that community newspapers, more so than your large circulation regional newspapers, but your local neighborhood or city newspapers, they're starving for content. They would love to run stories about your church, your program, your ideas, and those are ways for you to broadcast the work that you're doing in your community to a very local neighborhood. Talk about people, talk about your spaghetti dinner or the other things that you're doing to a really local audience. It's a good way to show and demonstrate impact to an area that you are immediately serving. So don't discount those local newspapers and circulars. They're really important in getting our message out and talking about the kinds of impact we have. They're also, as I said, really hungry for content. They will do a story on you if you submit it and run it for, they'll run it if you give it to them. They want to do that. When you have civic leaders or neighborhood leaders visit your church or your program for any reason, maybe they're cutting a ribbon, or maybe they're coming to issue a proclamation, or maybe they're, put that in all of the channels available to you to broadcast that message on your social media, on your website, in local newspapers. If you need help with that, the DioCal communications team, Stephanie Martin Taylor and Adia Milan, are amazing, and they will work with you and your congregation on a communication strategy that gets attention, from writing a press release to redoing your website to thinking about your newsletter. They are full of tools, and they'll do an assessment on everything that you're doing and then give you practical tips on how to address it or improve on it or tell you you're doing a great job. But they're great, and that's open to you. We need to communicate more about the impact we're having in our community. Episcopalians are really shy about this. And it's to our detriment, because we do some really beautiful work. The world needs to know about it. We need to report on our membership as well. So the members are the key to our mission. They help us do the work. They are our volunteers. They are the reason that, they're the reason our doors are open, because there's something for them to come to, right? So our members need to be reported on, thanked, talked about, upheld, celebrated in all the ways that we can. Recognize our volunteers at all the appropriate occasions. In our newsletter, when they do something great, when a ministry is going well. It's not just because the church is doing it or the budget is funding it. It's also because there are people who care about it and are working for it. Make sure that their names get mentioned. Make sure that they get recognized. Of course, you need to report on your Sunday attendance, and that's what our parochial reports need. But there are all those other things that we do throughout the week that don't always get mentioned and don't always get numbers put around them, like midweek Bible studies or EFM groups or Stephen ministry or adult education or games nights, or the things that we do in our communities throughout the week, bringing people together, that don't get included in average Sunday attendance or the number of communions served, right? There are other numbers to report on. I know of a congregation that has a really robust Wednesday night. They do a simple service, they have dinner together, and they do a education program, and it sometimes gets as many as 40 people. Their average Sunday attendance is about 100. So this program is really well attended, and it's not all people who also come on Sundays. There are people who just see the Wednesday night group as their community. We need to report on those things too, because those people are important and they're members. They also need to be wrapped into our stewardship. So people who see us midweek and invest in our programs, I'm not talking about our support programs or our client-based service programs, but our educational programs or our other sorts of inward focused programs. If there are people just coming to that, they're members, and they should be asked to contribute their time and talent and treasure to sustaining those programs as well. It's not just the folks who show up on Sunday who are making our churches run. We should head off any concern if we are below our membership goals for the year. This is because when we tell people, we'd hoped to have 7 new families join this year, and we're really trying to grow in this area. then everyone can be pulling for that, right? If we let people know that there's something we're trying to accomplish, people will try and help us accomplish it. This is true of our membership and our growth as well. If clergy or the vestry have an idea in their mind for how much the church needs to grow in order to achieve a different budget status or whatever, and we don't tell people that number, they can't pray about it, they can't visualize it, they can't act on it. So we need to help people understand if we are below our goals, how they can help us correct it. People will be generous with their ideas and their money if we give them a reason to. What kinds of small groups or other formation activities or social activities are we doing? Make sure we're running stories and articles and reporting on those things too, because they're really important hallmarks of vitality and vibrancy in our communities. So if you have a book club that meets weekly or monthly, every once in a while do a story on them. Talk about what they're reading. Do an interview with someone who you can appreciate why they're a part of it and what it means to them and what kinds of conversation they have, in as much as they're willing and appropriately able to share. These are really important things that we don't always think about, including when we're talking about reporting on our mission. But all of those things are true. If you ask someone to write up a paragraph about what their book club means to them, or what the Tuesday morning prayer service that only 3 people attend means to them, they will do it. They'll tell you, and then you can tell other people about why this is a special thing that people do. You can also present new opportunities for engagement, right? It gets the wheels turning. So you can present new opportunities for formation, Christian education, or youth education throughout the year. You can talk about the programs that need more volunteers. Maybe there's a guild that needs more staffing, or a committee that could be fleshed out. Or maybe there's a particular skill that you're lacking. So we need someone who's really good at building websites or managing volunteers, or can help us think about creating new bylaws, or someone who can, lay out a newsletter and teach us how to do it. When you ask people for these skills that they do in their daily lives, or that they have accumulated throughout their lifetime of experience, and they share them with the church, then they're giving more gifts to the church. And it's all about increasing the kinds of ways that we can give of ourselves and share our own experience. When we talk about stewardship, we talk about the time, talent, and treasure three-legged stool. And often in stewardship, we become a little cynical and we say, well, we're really just talking about the treasure, aren't we? But I want us to be clear that when we talk about stewardship and gratitude and generosity, we are encouraging and forming and expecting our members to share all the gifts that they have with us. Their time, certainly, through volunteerism, through running committees, through praying, through being a part of their work throughout the year. When people commit, some people on pledge cards commit to a certain number of hours a week that they will work for the church. I've seen a couple of congregations do this in the diocese. And one person said, I always fill this out and I never know how I'm going to make it. And then I remember that my prayer is about church and it's about service and it's my hours of time as well. And the things that the prayers that I say at night, or the prayers that I say for my friends and neighbors, and the work that the study that I do throughout the week, those are other ways that we volunteer our hours for the church and the increase of the reign of God. So remember all of those things. This is our time and our talent, our wisdom, our shared experience, and our treasure. If you're going to do an event to bring all of this together, I suggest a nice mid-year meeting, a picnic. Imagine a time in which we can gather again. and we can do these kinds of events. Bring people together so they can share, have a good time, where you can talk about the goals that you've set and where you're at and where you need to be. You can bring in the testimonials and the people and the storytelling in a conversational way. Or you could do an event, a Zoom coffee hour, some other way to broadcast this reporting and talk about where you're at this year in terms of your goals, your money, your budget, and your mission. Whatever you do, if it's in a weekly bulletin or newsletter, if it's in your announcements, if it's through an event, however you report on your money, your mission, and your members, please remember that this is what motivates us to give and to share and to be a part of this great work that we do together. Anything that you write up and put on paper, include an electronic version of so that it can be mailed out, posted on your website, shared through social media, and become viral. You never know what will become viral in your community. Virus is a bad word these days, but when we're talking about sharing great ideas, it's still wonderful. I want to end our time before I ask for questions or dig into anything that we've talked about with this really beautiful quote from Henry Nouwen's Spirituality of Fundraising. Nouwen writes, God is a God of abundance, not a God of scarcity. Jesus reveals to us God's abundance when he offers so much bread to the people that there are 12 large baskets with leftover scraps. And when he makes his disciples catch so many fish that their boat nearly sinks. God doesn't give us just enough. God gives us more than enough, more bread and fish than we can eat, more love than we dared to ask for. God is a generous giver, but we can only see and enjoy God's generosity when we love God with all our hearts, minds, and strength. As long as we say, I will love you, God, but first show me your generosity, we will remain distant from God and unable to experience what God truly wants to give us, which is life and life in abundance. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and bring us back into our group and offer a chance to ask any questions about reporting on money, mission, or members, or why you may do this, or to hear examples of what you're already doing in your congregation to report on your budgets, your narrative budgets, your mission, or to recognize your members. Anybody doing any of this work? I bet you are in some way.
I think we're doing it on a fairly small level. I mean, we're a very, St. Cyprian's is a small congregation, but and this year is very different because we've had, 13 renters to like none. But I think that the beautiful part about the last year has been kind of the way the community, the church, really invested in itself and cared for each other. And I really appreciated your reminder to talk about that and use it as, a beautiful reminder to give your Dallas.
A lot of times we think, oh, people don't want to know about that, or they already know it. Why would we need to write it up again or share it? But, even when you think they know it, tell them again. Remind people that they're doing great stuff together and the church is there for them and they're a part of it. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Anna. I know you guys have had a real rough year losing so many renters at once. That's got to be brutal. I'm glad that perhaps we're coming out of it. Praying for you all. Yeah, Sylvia.
Hi, here at St. James, we usually don't do a mid-year evaluation so much. We do a year-end evaluation, but I think it's a good idea. We can put all what you talk about reporting the money part, the mission and members, maybe in our monthly newsletter, small articles, different little tidbits in there to kind of, since we are gathering in person again, to kind of jumpstart the remaining of the year. I think that might be a way of doing it.
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be a big single event in the middle of the year. As you say, little by little, reporting program by program in a weekly or monthly newsletter or in some kind of regular way. If it's a regular feature, it helps us, it just reinforces that we're doing things, we're letting you know, we're transparent and accountable, we're doing great stuff with your money, we're doing great stuff with your time and talent. And we still need more ideas, and there are new opportunities, and it just keeps the dialogue open. Thanks, Sylvia. That's great. I'm glad that you guys at St. James are doing all that and thinking about it.
Yeah, we do a little bit of it. We have like a ministry column that different ministry will write something, but I think we can do it more intentional. And I know we don't really report on the money part, except usually in the mid-year, we get a kind of an emergency letter out to ask for donation because things are slowed down during holiday vacation time.
Yeah.
Type of thing, but more of numbers and different testimonials and ministries will be good.
That's great. Thank you. Bruce, hey.
This is a copy of our monthly newsletter. The current one is 18 pages. I have never seen it so large.
Wow, that's crazy. What's in 18 pages?
Oh, a note from the Reverend Bill, Worship Formation Fellowship article. May light perpetual shine upon them, which is basically obituaries of folks who have died in the last few months. Turned out to be a lot.
Yeah, I guess. What a newsletter. That's a big newsletter.
Our endowment fund, big article.
Oh, good.
Social Justice Task Force, volunteer appreciation event, Vestry Voices. Thank you, Meg. Vestry Highlights. Money words from the treasurer.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Bruce.
Article about a graduating senior.
Wow. And you do this in paper? How often does this come out?
Well, it's online, but I can't stand to read it online. I print it out.
Oh, okay.
If this is Janet, if I can speak up, I'm one of the editors of the newsletter. It usually is about 12 pages long. But we've lost a number of people passed away since the first of the year. So we did a special memorial issue and had a little blurb about each one and a picture. And it is published actually online in PDF.
Yes, about
great.
once a month.
Once a
Thank
month.
you, Janet.
It's a monthly. Yeah.
Wow, St. James has a great newsletter program going on. Good communication, good transparency. I heard all your articles. You've got a mission update, a programs update, a money update, volunteers. Good stuff. Thank you for doing that. That's a great example. We should all go look at your website and find it.
Yes, you should. stj.com.
Hey.com. Are there any other, what about any questions that you have? It seems like a lot of you do this work already, which is great. This is a good reminder to keep doing it. Are there any questions or new ideas? Maybe something you're thinking about doing and you want to bounce it off of us? Yeah, Meg.
Hi, I'm just curious what a narrative budget is like. I mean, it sounds like it could get really lengthy. Like, are you just verbalizing everything that's kind of going on in story form? Because that could be quite large, theoretically, right?
Well, yeah, they
How
can
is
be.
it shared or published or something, or is it just little blurbs? I don't know.
Yeah, I will share with you a few examples of narrative budgets that I've collected over the years, and a couple of documents that will show that to you. But they're not 18 pages, but they are more than a couple usually, because you want pictures and you want some program. It's a chance to. It serves both as a budget and a report on what your expectations are. So it's a bit of a promotional piece as well, right? Because it's talking about the programs and what they cost to run. Whenever you're writing anything, including newsletters, it's always good to use fewer words than more because we read a lot and we have a limited amount of time to do it. And so the tighter we can get our sentences and the more we can rely on pictures and numbers to tell some story and just use text when we need to. It's great. You've seen narrative budgets if you've been past your church bulletin board anytime in the last 8 years, because the diocese always sends them out and they sit around. I like to go to congregations and I'm like, oh, there it is. It's in some like forgotten hallway. It's somewhere posted. And you can see what a narrative budget looks like. But I will send you some examples when I send out the materials from this. You can see what they look like. And I'll also send you that document from TENS that I was telling you about that tells you how to create one. And it's a little infographic that breaks it all down for you. And then there's an example of what one looks like. So I'll send you that. Great. I love narrative budgets. They don't replace a line item budget. They both need to exist, but a narrative budget is just such a better way to describe the work that's being done. When you look at single line items, it costs this much in electricity. You say, well, why? We're only here 1 day a week. What are we using all this electricity for? And then you remember, oh, we're here every day. There are things going on all the time, not just when I come in. And so it helps us remember that lots of things rely on our gifts. Are there any other questions or ideas? I really appreciate your time tonight, and I love doing this work with you. It's been fun this year, and as we do this work together. Our next conversation is in June, and we're going to be talking about virtual stewardship. So we're going to look at online giving platforms. We're going to talk about best practices on your online donation forms, how to create websites for fundraising, how to do events online if you do like a talent show or a spaghetti dinner, or how do you can virtualize some of those things, because we're going to continue to be in a hybrid, semi-socially distanced thing for a while. So we'll be talking about that on June 24th, our next time together. Well, I thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate all that you're doing already in this work. If we can just remember to keep doing it and keep our members aware of where their gifts are going, it will help strengthen our stewardship in the long run, because people will be more understanding of what's happening. I will send you a link to this video so you can share it with people who weren't here. I'll send you the slides so that you have access to them. And I'll send you links to all the documents that we've talked about tonight. I really appreciate you and the work that you do for stewardship in your church. I send you out with all beautiful Pentecost blessings of fire and wind and storm and chaos, and go out there and do it all.
Thanks, Davey.
Thank you, Davey.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.